Hey guys, it's Eli coming to you this week with our fourth and final step when it comes to choosing the right herb for you, your family, or your client. This one I use, a lot of herbalists don't. A lot of herbalists stop when it comes to action, but I do take it a step further, and that is to go into the energetics. I know, and that's where part of the problem comes in. A lot of people hear the word energetics and they start thinking, yeah, but I'm not into that kind of thing. But here's the thing. Energetics, when we're talking about the 4 steps to choosing an herb, you're talking organ affinity, then you look at taste, then you look at action, then you look at energetics. This 4th step, I'm talking about the energy actually in the plant. Remember, plants are alive. They have energy. We have energy. We have cellular energy. You know, our cells are running around, atoms are bouncing, neurons are being switched between, all of that kind of stuff. This is what we mean when we say energy. We're literally talking about cellular energy. And most herbalists will divide cellular energy, or the energy of a plant, into 6 categories. And by looking at, asking yourself this simple question again, what do I want this herb to do? And looking at these 6 energies, it brings you even closer to finding the right key. Many times this is the step that herbalists say, this is how I find the exact key. You know, I have all kinds of herbs. It's kind of like having a keychain full of house keys. I can have 100 house keys on a keychain, but only one of them will open my front door. And for a lot of herbalists, they believe that energetics is how you pinpoint that exact key. You look at the organ affinity. This is true. You look at the taste. This is another step closer. You look at the action. This is another step closer. But a lot of herbalists believe that when you get down to the energetics, this is when you look exactly what that person needs. And believe it or not, energetics was actually created by discovered, created, whatever you want to call it. We give credit to the physiomedicalists or the eclectic stage. And the physiomedicalists were doctors. So there is a scientific method to this. They were doctors who began using herbs to help their patients. And they began writing about them, and it is what we call the eclectic period. So let's talk about those 6 energies. The first one is hot. Now, I know we're all a little hot. I mean, it is summer, although it's a beautiful day today, but tomorrow is supposed to be excruciating. I'm talking hot as in excited. You know, when something gets excited, it turns red. We're talking heat. We're talking energy. We're talking about a pot that's boiling. A lot of people who have this heat, they have the red flushed skin. They're always warm. You know, there are people who maybe you see that's in they're always on the go. You know, they seem to have so much energy. Toddlers can be very hot. They can be very exhausting. They have a lot of this energy, this go, 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 go. Well, you get that stimulation in the cells. You know, there are a lot of cells that if you look at a cell in a picture, basically it looks like that video game we used to play way back when. I know, I'm showing my age. And things used to bounce off the walls. Boing, 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 boing. That is what we're talking about is going on. It's like a boiling pot. You know, the bubbles are just going crazy. A lot. And what we do is we associate this heat with energy. So a lot of times your herbs that are hot really give you heat. Think chili, think ginger, think turmeric. They're warming herbs. Okay, that warmth is that hot energetic. And what you want to do, so basically, you know, think energy, think chemical. You want to find people who are cold. Maybe they don't have a lot of energy. They're very melancholy. They're very, you know, their skin is really pale. There's not a lot of color. There's not a lot of energy. They're very Eeyore in their personality type. You know, I'm a Pooh fan. So let's talk. Hot is Tigger. Cold is Eeyore. And that's exactly what you're looking at. You have hot herbs and you have cold herbs. They're opposites. They're the temperature herbs. You know, and basically you want to give Tigger herbs to Eeyore people, and you want to give Eeyore herbs to Tigger people. People who are very cold, you know, maybe their hands are always cold. Their feet are always cold. Like I said, they don't have a lot of color in their skin. These are situations where you want to give warming herbs. It can also be looking exactly at an illness. There are a lot of health conditions that are very cold. There's not a lot of energy in them. Maybe there's no fever. Chills, believe it or not, while we want to think cold, chills can be a hot thing because that's actually is an energetic, type of feeling. Cold is people where there's not a lot of energy. There's not a lot of displacement. There is a very blah to it. So those are your first two opposites, hot and cold. Your next two opposites are also energies. They are damp and dry. And there again, we're talking tissue state here. So think of dry skin. Think of dry mouth. That's exactly what we're talking about. My husband is a very dry person. His skin is always itchy. He always has, that dry skin feeling of needing lotion. And okay, that's on the outside. It can also be happening on the inside to the tissue. You have tissue that doesn't have enough moisture to it. It's very dry. On the other hand, you have damp tissue or damp people. This is where you have excess moisture. You can have bloating. You can have, that look that there's a puffiness to them. There's a dampness to them. This happens a lot in your tissue. A very dear mentor that I love to death, Jim McDonald, he often shows the damp by blowing up a balloon and then letting the air out of it. And you get that saggy, look to it. That's what the tissue looks like. This is where and like I said, there again, you're thinking opposite. So if you have damp tissue, you're thinking dry herbs. If you have dry herbs, you're thinking, moistening herbs. And I will tell you, there's not a lot of moistening herbs out there, but there are some. The last two opposites are stimulant and relaxant herbs. Exactly what the name says. You have stimulant herbs. You have herbs that cause that boiling pot. You have those herbs that cause the trigger reaction, the bouncing reaction. Then you have relaxing herbs. These are the herbs that take a trigger to an Eeyore. They calm, they reduce stimulation, they relax. Now, here is where these 6 steps come into. This is the last question you want to ask. I have my affinity. I have the fact that this is the liver. Cool. I know what taste I want. I know that I want bitter. I know what action I'm looking for. And I'm drawing a blank on an action that pertains to the liver. Let's say I'm looking for a diuretic. So I've gotten those 2 questions. Now I'm going to look exactly what is going on with this person. Are they overstimulated? Do they need a cooling, relaxing herb? Maybe they need more stimulation. Maybe they need a hot stimulant herb, that is a little bit of moistening. Maybe there's a lot of dryness going on because they're so excited. They're so amped up that their body's losing moisture. So now you want that moistening, relaxing, cooling herb. Now I have pinpointed exactly what I want, because now I can look at my book of herbs and say, okay, there's the organ I want. There's the taste I want. There's the action I want. But that's kind of really, really general. I mean, there are a lot of herbs that still fit in those 3 categories. But now when I look at exactly the action, exactly the energy that I want this herb to have on this person, this tissue state or this condition, now I'm getting down to the key with the exact notches in the teeth to do exactly what I want to do. So that is stimulating herbs. That is herbal energetics. That is the 4 keys that I use to pick out an herb. Join me next time when we will be moving on to a completely different topic. If you guys need more information, you can always find me on my website. That's eliherbalclinic.com. There's no S. Or reach out to me here on Facebook. I'd love to answer your questions. I'd love to talk. Get with me, guys. Bye.